Hi, everybody. Lynn Louise Wonders here from Wonders Counseling and Consulting, wonderscounseling.com. And I'm here with a very special guest today, and I can't wait for you to meet her if you haven't already heard about her. And I'm just going to go click over here real quick. I've got a few little notes here. But this is Xanthia Johnson, and she is the owner of Urban Playology, which is a private practice in the Washington, D.C. area. And her work is amazing, and she is really making a splash in the field of play therapy, diversity, and we're going to talk today specifically about the very special niche that she has developed. She works providing expressive healing arts, and she works with unique families. And so, Xanthia, I would love it if you would tell us a little bit more about what your purpose and your passion is, and a little bit more about how you came to do this kind of work.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you for having me, and hello to all of your folks watching. Thanks for tuning in with us. As Lynn said, I am the owner of and CEO of Urban Playology, and we are a boutique private practice in Washington, D.C. We provide transformative psychotherapy and expressive art healing to outliers, unique families, and LGBTIQUA folk. And we really love the work that we're doing here.
So you work with a very special population, and I would love it if you'd say a little bit more about the population you're working with and what exactly you're helping them with, and then tell us how you stumbled into this, or did you do it intentionally?
No, it was not intentional, I'll be honest. So I work primarily with LGBTIQA folk, and that is across the lifespan. So
Okay.
Young people as young as 2 years old and as young at heart as 85 years old. And what I found, being in such a diverse place like DC, is that, there are people from so many different walks of life that come here. And, for many of them, they are struggling with either their orientation is at the forefront of their concerns, or their gender identity. And, as time has progressed, my practice started, my counseling practice, my play therapy practice started in DC. As time has progressed over time, I realized that more and more young people are coming to seek expressive arts therapy and or play therapy because of either the gender identity issues and concerns or their sexual orientation. And in terms of how I stumbled into this work, that's exactly what it was. I was just joking with you. Remember, I was joking with you about the fact that, I'm a country girl at heart. We still stop for the ducks where I come from. I don't think I ever consciously met growing up, a person who identified as being of sexual minority status, and certainly not, a young person. And so it's been such a treat to get trained, and we do a lot of training, even nationwide. We just got a grant to do some work with a local county that is really wanting to improve their support of, LGBTIQA folk, and those who identify as being gender diverse. So we're really excited about that. And, for me, one of my internship sites, we did work primarily with this population, but for the most part, I really just fell into it. And, falling into it was a good thing, because I don't necessarily know that I would have consciously chosen it, just because, I'm shy, and I don't know, I'm just shy. But, when it came down to it, what it comes down to for me all the time is the fact that everybody who seeks us out, one, is a courageous soul. And so two, they should have a right to have quality services no matter what's going on with them.
Yeah. So I want to ask if you could sort of clarify something. So you mentioned gender diverse, and that's sort of a new phrase to a lot of people. And I know when we spoke earlier, there was another phrase you used, which was sexual minority. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the definition of sexual minority and gender diversity.
Sure. So sexual minority refers to people who identify as being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, asexual. There's actually a lot more acronyms now than there was when I first started. There's pansexual, asexual, as you know, as an identity. And then when we talk about gender diversity, that is a subset of sexual minority status in terms of that is less about orientation and more about gender identity.
Okay.
So, you know, for myself, you know, I am a cisgendered female, meaning that I was born a female biologically and my insides and my outsides match. But for people who don't have that experience, then there's some gender diversity that's likely happening for them.
Okay. And so, you know, most of the people that are going to be viewing this video are providing play therapy services for children, or either already registered play therapists like yourself, or you're a registered play therapist supervisor, as I am. And so I'm curious to know how we can help them understand ways that they might be able to identify when a child client or a client that is a young adult or an adult, but how, especially I guess with children, how would we identify that a child may be struggling with one of these issues that you're addressing?
Great question. So usually what we'll see with young people I want to say this, you know, sexual development, you know, we think about the lifespan, you know, everybody goes through that, right?
Right.
But for kids that are struggling with their orientation or with their gender diversity issues, we're going to see a lot of interesting play from them. And what I love is that if we take it back to Virginia Axline, Gary Landreth, you are good to go. You know, that non-directive play therapy, allowing them to have a safe place to be whoever they are, allowing them to engage, you know, whatever miniatures, whatever activities bring them comfort in the playroom is wonderful. So that's the first phase of working with young people who are struggling with this. One of the things I always do with clients is I have them do self-portraiture and then portrait of the family doing an activity. And, you know, when we look at how they depict themselves, you know, sometimes, you know, you'll see that maybe the way that they're depicted in the way that they depict themselves in the portrait, for example, is different from what your eyes are physically seeing. We also, too, I have a miniature that I'm going to show for your viewers to see. This miniature is, I don't know if they can see it.
Yeah, hold
there's
it right
a duality. There. Yeah, there's a duality there.
Can you hold it up again?
Sure.
I want to look at that. Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Duality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you'll see this theme of duality, okay, or fragmentation around identity coming up over and over and over again. For young people, I want to be clear, we never draw this out from them, that from a trauma-informed perspective, we can say, I just want you to know if you ever have any concerns or this is something that's on your mind, I'm here for you to talk about it. So you plant the seed or to talk or play about it. You always plant the seed with them about that. Mm-hmm. Another technique that I've used, I'm so glad to see that the APT is now beginning to give more credit to photo elicitation therapy. I mean, that is such an amazing, you know, movement for us, because when you look at what a child looked like when they were born and then how they evolved, you know, through their lives, if you start to see some very discernible changes, you know, in terms of like how they're presenting in those photos, that also too, that's happened before in my practice, you know, that's also to a sign that gender might be an issue. Now, I want to also to say that sometimes you never see any of this. You never see the duality play. You never see anything that's different or that kind of catches your attention, you know, in their artwork or anything like that. But as a play therapist, we still have to hold a space holder, so to speak, for that to be the case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I'm also wondering, well, because I've heard about, you know, from supervisees who have these kinds of cases, that sometimes it can feel challenging for the therapist to know how to discuss this topic with the parents, with the family. And I'm wondering if you have some suggestions or ideas about that.
Yes. So the first thing to know is that we always use our clinical supervision, our play therapy supervision, as the first stop. We don't go into these conversations, we don't go into sessions to talk about this with families without having, checked in with somebody who's actually been doing this work.
Right.
So that we can just be clear about what the message is that we want to convey. We want to assess, kind of where the parents are. Most of the parents that come to make their way to my practice are quite liberal, but some of them are not, and so you kind of have to assess kind of where parents are, in terms of, their perspective on this. And once you know that really informs how you're going to approach this topic with them. And so when you're working with kids that identify as being of sexual minority status or who are gender diverse, it's a two-pronged approach. You're working with the adults to create as much embrace as opposed to tolerance as possible, as is genuine to them. And then you're also working with the young person to provide, some healthy, adaptive psychoeducation about how the people in their lives may experience this. So let's say you have, a child that was born biologically male, but who likes to wear what we would generally characterize as, girls' clothes. We would provide them with, psychoed to say that everybody is not going to experience you in the ways that feel loving, or that in ways that help you feel seen, but it doesn't mean that you don't get to do it. You get to do it in play therapy, you get to do it maybe at home. So then you start really negotiating, the boundaries for the families in ways that are going to optimally keep the kids safe and healthy. But I would say that, one of the things for therapists to know, play therapists to know, is that you do eventually want to have a conversation, because the suicidality rate is very high. So not just the ideation, but the actual execution, right?
Wow.
Not just the attempt. It's very high, and we're seeing it in children as young as 5. Okay, so there's that piece too for them to know. And in one of the most recent magazines I was reading, a parent said, she said, it became crystal clear to me that the therapist said, do you want your child to be alive, or do you want them to be dead? And that for them was like, that made all the difference. Parents, this can be a really, even for liberal parents, it's grief and loss. It's trauma almost, to know that, the dreams, the hopes and dreams you had for your young person, it may seem like that's going to be different than what you envisioned, so it's a hard thing for families.
And I'm hearing you talk about, and this is just my paraphrasing, but it sounds like what you're talking to a lot of different levels here. Like there's layers of sensitivity that we have to all the cultural nuances, whether it's culture in terms of the culture of the family, culture of the community, culture, the background, the racial, ethnic background for the family, their political culture, and then you've got the issue of what's going on for the child with regard to the gender diversity point as well. So it's like layers and layers of diversity sensitivity, if you will.
That's right. That's
wow.
Absolutely right.
And then that component with regard to the high risk of suicidal, chances and the statistics there. So that really calls therapists to be very carefully tuned in, it sounds like. So other than that really cool miniature you have there, by the way, I can already predict everybody's going to be saying, where can I get that miniature?
I was lucky to find this on eBay.
Okay.
And I will, this character actually has a name, and I'll be happy to share that with you. I've got to go back and look it up. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Oh, no problem. What I was going to say is after we get done recording this interview, we will get some resource links and put them in the comments below wherever I post this. So we'll include that in the post once we get this up on social media. So I guess I want to know now, other than that really neat miniature that you had, what are some of the equipment, toys, items, other things that you would suggest that we need to include in our playrooms in order to reflect this sensitivity to gender diversity and sexual minority?
Yes. So, yes, you do want to have toys, miniatures that depict duality. You want to have people or animals that appear gender neutral, so that any gender can be ascribed to them. You want to have different. I would also to say you want to have different tactile uh, supplies, so that young people have an opportunity to depict all the different fragments of identity that they might be kind of trying to sort out. Collage is wonderful for that. You want to have so some of the basic play therapy supplies that we've always had, we want those are actually work. You have your acrylic paint, you have your watercolor paint, because those, for example, can help again, depict that fragmentation and the struggle, with the fluidity of the watercolor versus, the stiffness of the acrylic paint, and of course, sand tray, if people can, play therapists are using sand tray, I think that's also to another wonderful way to, provide support to young people who are struggling with this. And, what I found is that sometimes young people who are struggling with this issue, they don't put anything in the sand tray. They don't put anything in the sand tray. They will either create intricate or elaborate shapes and lines, or they will create a story about what's happening in the sand tray, for example, but they haven't actually placed a miniature in the sand tray. So
how do they do it if they don't put anything in there? What is it? What would it
so
look like?
they will sit at the sand tray and then create, verbally tell you a story about what's happening in the sand tray. And so for me, what I've come to realize or assess or hypothesize is that because the struggle is so all consuming for them, sometimes it's hard for them to even imagine actually putting something tactile or concrete to what they're experiencing. So they tell the story from their mind's eye, but they can't bring themselves necessarily to actually place something in the sand, even when when I, as a play therapist, encourage them to do that. And to put, we know that because there's that projective aspect to play therapy, to actually put something that's in your mind, put that in the sand tray, it's right there in front of you, right? So it's a different layer of confronting that sometimes young people are working towards. And so from an assessment perspective, if that's where they start, ideally over time they're able to place one miniature in the sand tray, and then two, and then three, and then four, however many they wish. But for some of them, it's so hard to think about what they would put in the sand tray, because this issue is so overwhelming for them.
So that sounds like therapists really need to be very sensitive to not pushing, or even realizing like what would normally just be an invitation for one client who's not struggling with these issues could feel like pressure, or could feel, do I have that right?
That's right. That's absolutely right.
So, okay. So obviously you mentioned how important supervision is, and you are a registered play therapist supervisor. And so I just want to throw this out there that people who are watching this, if you need supervision, contact Xanthia and see if you can get onto her schedule because it sounds like you would be a great resource. I'm wondering about what other training is available, resources, because obviously this is a special population, and we need to make sure that we're operating within our scope of training and being supervised and all of that. So tell us more about where can people learn more about all of this?
Well, I know at Urban Playology, I have felt led to offer trainings, virtual trainings about this to specifically to play therapists. I mean, play therapy was my very first post-licensure credential, and I am, a play therapist at heart. So we are going to be offering virtual trainings and virtual supervision groups sometime this summer, so that clinicians who want to learn about this, play therapists who want to learn about this and develop their competencies around this, so that they can do that as well. I would say that if you go to any standard CEU trainings where this issue is explored, you have to be prepared that there may only be a focus on adults, and so you kind of have to translate what you learn for the work that you're doing with young people. And then there may not be a direct focus on play therapy, but it doesn't mean that you can't get something from the training. And then also to the Starbright Institute that's here in the DMV, that was started by Ileana Gill. There is a doctoral student that offers trainings there about working with LGBTIQUA and gender diverse children, and who really explores like the intersection of sexual identity development as it relates to play therapy. And the basic tenets of play therapy, while you're looking for a good training site for yourself about this, remember those basic play therapy,
child-centered,
that child-centered. You can never go wrong with that. Now, you do have to eventually evolve into solution-focused play therapy and different types of play therapy once a young person has kind of made a disclosure to you, direct disclosure. Then you can kind of move in a different way. But for those initial stages, they're still just trying to figure out whether they want to share this with you directly, and two, whether you can handle it.
Right. Well, okay, so before we wrap up today, I know people are going to want to get in touch with you, and we will include links to your website and so forth in the posts that we put on social media, but go ahead and tell us now what your website is and how people can get in touch. And do you have like an email list that they can sign up for so they can get announcements when your trainings come out? Tell us more about how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. They can go to our website, which is www.urbanplayology, all one word, .com, www.urbanplayology.com. And on that website, there's a link, there's a pop-up for them to sign up for our newsletter. And in our newsletter, all of our trainings, all the trainings that we're offering are going to be listed in that newsletter. People can also reach out to me directly. I answer all of my own emails, and love hearing from people all around the country, all around the world. We've got some folks in Asia who have been reaching out to us because this is a big issue. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing it is because there's more visibility in the media. So it's not a fact. More visibility of people who are saying, this is a part of my life story. And so my email address is Xanthia, XANTHIA, @urbanplayology.com. And people can reach out to me that way as well.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored that you reached out to me and that we connected, and I'm so glad to know you. And I think the work that you're doing is so important. And I just had this vision flash in front of my mind's eye as you were talking, that maybe someday you'll create some kind of a certification training or something, because I believe that this is such a special topic. And I really want to encourage everybody to make sure that you don't just wander into this work without getting supervision and training and consultation on these cases. And on that note, I'm assuming that you also would offer case consultation for people.
Absolutely.
I know you have supervision, but I mean, for people that don't necessarily need the supervisory hours, it would be like a consultative session they could have with you.
That's right. We definitely offer that, and people have sought me out for that as well. But I just want your viewers to know, hang in there. Thank you for the hard work that you're doing on the front lines with young people. They trust you. They need you. You're doing the right thing. And you get to be confident in your play therapy practice and give voice to the voiceless.
Thank you so much, Xanthia. And if you're watching this video and you need more information, she's given you her contact information. If you need to reach out to me, you can find me at wonderscounseling.com.